Hello, this is Chowrin, and in this video I finally get my fucking Light of Dawn title. I'm going to explain to you how to do it so that you can get it too. The first thing you should know about this fight is that the Lich King is a fight with 3 phases, split by transition phases. You will need 2 tanks, lots of high DPS, and at least a few healers, including 1 to 2 disciplined priests. You want to begin the fight with your raid group split up into 3 groups and form a sort of triangle. In one group, you have your melee DPS and the main tank. In the second group, you want to have your healers and your ranged DPS. And in the third group, you want to have your off tank, who's going to be all by themselves. The purpose of doing this way is twofold. First, the Lich King is going to infect one of your raid members with a disease that's called necrotic plague. It must be dispelled quickly. If you wait more than 5 seconds to cleanse it, then that person will probably die unless they're maybe a tank. If you cleanse it immediately, though, they will just pass the plague to somebody else in the raid, like a hot potato. Every time that gets dispelled from one raid member to another, the Lich King gets a buff that makes him hit all the harder. What you want to do instead is have the infected person run to the off tank and be cleansed there. This actually spreads the disease to the adds, who start to die off to it. Each time one of them dies to it, it gains a stack and does even more damage. This is how you kill them. The second reason we do it this way is to make it easier to deal with the shambling horrors. The Lich King summons 2 kinds of adds in this phase: Drudge Ghouls and Shambling Horrors. The Drudge Ghouls don't do much in the way of damage and are mostly there to build up your necrotic plague. You can basically ignore them and just make sure they're all in the off tank. Shambling Horrors are a bit nastier, and one of their abilities is called Shockwave. Shockwave is a conal AoE attack that will pretty much one-shot anybody but a tank, so you want to keep them facing away from the raid at all times. Sometimes they want to move around in strange ways to get at the off tank, so whoever is doing that job must be able to adjust accordingly. In addition to Shockwave, they're also going to use Enrage, so you want to have either a rogue using anesthetic poison, not advised, a shaman using purge, not advised either, or, advised, best of all, have a hunter using trank shot. If you want to know how to do this, I have another video on how to trank shot the horrors. You can look up how to do it there. You want to make sure that these things stay on the off tank at all times, so melee DPS really needs to watch their AoE attacks. The Lich King also uses 2 other abilities: Infest and Shadow Trap. Infest is an ability that does a lot of shadow damage, but that goes away after a player is above 90% health. It's best countered by bringing in 1 to 2 disciplined priests to heal the raid. He does this in each one of his 3 phases, so you're going to want to keep the whole raid shielded for pretty much the entire fight. The other ability is one that is specific to Heroic, and it's called Shadow Trap. Shadow Trap's appearance is going to vary depending on how high your graphics settings are. I usually keep my graphics settings very low so that I have higher FPS, although in my videos it's always 20 so that I can record easier. You'll see here in this video as the shadowy ring on the ground, if anybody steps on it, it's going to explode and it will knock whoever set it off and anybody standing near that person back so far that it's actually kind of comical, at least the first few times that you die to it. For this reason, it's essential that everybody avoid them. To do this, in addition to whatever boss add-ons you use, watch for the shadowy orb to be cast from the Lich King. That's going to be the indication of where it's going to go. Boss add-ons are not very effective in telling you who the target of Shadow Trap is going to be, so you cannot rely on them. Once the trap goes out, the group that it's heading for needs to reposition themselves and stay as a group. Stay stacked tightly together. Gradually move the raid along the edge of the platform and try to keep in that triangle formation. The reason you want to do this is so that you have to move as little as possible when the transition comes. At 70%, he's going to run into the middle of the room and begin casting a spell called Remorseless Winter, and that's the beginning of the phase transition. At this point, you go into a transition phase, and you're going to run onto the edge and spread around it. The off tank is going to have a lot of ads on him still, so you want to pay attention to any horrors that are still up. Don't forget about the shockwave, and don't forget about the enrage. Your melee won't be doing much in this phase, but your ranged are going to want to kill the ice spheres that spawn. If they reach the raid, they're going to blow everybody in the raid off the platform. The raid's going to be taking some serious damage from pain and suffering in this phase, which is a conal frontal attack of damage, and it's all going to be shadow damage. It stacks every time it hits the same person over and over again, so people really need to stay spread out and not cluster together like you did on phase 1. Since the melee aren't doing much anyway during this part, they should be using defensive abilities such as going into defensive stance or doing some off healing like I'm doing here in this video. The final thing you're also going to have to worry about during this phase are the Raging Spirits. There are going to be 3 of them. They are spawned from a player and they do a nasty cleave and a silence effect. The off tank will want to tank them, as they will die to necrotic plague just like the ghouls and the horrors did. If your plague is gone before the last one comes out, you're going to have to kill it. You may also need to cleanse your off tank so that they can taunt. Once the Lich King starts to cast Quake, that's going to be your signal that you want to run back to the middle, as the outer edge of the platform will fall away after the cast finishes. This is the end of the transition phase. In phase 2, you no longer need to worry about shadow traps, necrotic plague, or any of the ads that you had to deal with in the first phase. But now you have to deal with 3 new abilities: Soul Reaper, Defile, and he's going to summon Valkyrs. Soul Reaper hits the tanks, and it hits them really hard, so both the healers and the tanks need to keep an eye out for it so that they can respond to it. Tanks need to use some kind of cooldown right before it goes off, and the healers need to be ready for a big heal. Overall though, this spell probably isn't going to wipe you. What might wipe you are the Valkyrs and the Defiles. They are the real mechanic to watch out for. Defile is cast on a raid member at random, and on Molten it can even be cast on the tank, so be really careful. You need to anticipate it being cast instead of reacting to it after he starts the cast, because the cast time is only 2 seconds long. When you factor in your reaction time and latency, you really don't have time to wait to spread until you see it. Once it goes off, it spawns that dark shadow on the ground under a player. For each second that a person stands in it, and in proportion to each person that is standing in it, it will grow and do shadow damage to everybody that it touches. And what I mean by this is that if you are standing next to someone and you get a defile on you and the 2 of you don't move, it will spread twice as fast as if it was just you who wasn't moving. For this reason, you don't want to stand next to anybody. And once you see the cast start, that's going to be your cue to move away. Not to spread, but to be in motion if the defile should be cast on you. If you are already moving, then you don't have to worry about latency or anything like that could cause the defile to grow. Also, you want to note that the defile is slightly bigger than its graphic would indicate. Valkyrs will spawn alternating with defile, and they will come 3 at a time. They hover in the air, and then they swoop down and pick up a player, and then they're going to fly that player over the edge and drop them over it. Since the Valks on Molten don't work exactly correct, we just ignore the Valks and rely on high DPS to burn through this phase. Sometimes they don't work exactly correctly in a good way, and will bug out and not pick anybody up. If you shoot them with a concussive shot or some other type of stun before they pick somebody up, this will sometimes work to bug them out, but it's not guaranteed. Another thing that sometimes people do is use vanity pets, because the Valks will pick these vanity pets up every now and then. Neither of these things is going to be guaranteed to keep you from getting picked up, but they will help your chances a little bit, so feel free to try them out if you like to. You don't have to, though. In the end, though, you really only need to break somebody out if they're going to be a disciplined priest or some other important raid member. Most people you can just safely ignore. Again, don't trust your boss add-ons too far when it comes to the timings of Defiles and Valkyrs. Bigwigs, DXE, and Deadly Boss mods are all wrong on the timing, since the scripting here on Molten is different than it was on retail. At 40%, the Lich King is going to cast an ability called Remorseless Winter, and again, you want to make sure you go back to the edge for the second transition phase. Congratulate yourself if you're still alive, because you've seen the last of the Valkyrs for this fight. This phase is identical to the other transition phase, with the exception that you're no longer going to have Necrotic Plague around to kill the ads for you, so you're going to have all your melee DPS on the Raging Spirits, while your ranged DPS still stay spread out and kill the Ice Spheres. When you come out of this final transition, you want to immediately spread out and be ready to be picked up. Very shortly, he will use an ability called Harvest Soul to pick up the raid members and pull them into Frostmourne. This is currently not working correctly on Molten, so you just free-for-all for a while, and then you go back to the platform. If it were working right, as it was earlier, you would want to group up and move around the room to avoid the stuff that falls from the ceiling. You would want to have one person marked and have everybody follow that mark. If anyone is dead going into this part of the fight, you will need to release. If you do not release, or if somebody somehow manages to die inside of the Frostmourne room, the Lich King is going to enrage as soon as you get back to the platform, and will probably one-shot your tank. You can probably find some way to salvage this situation by using distracting shot and taunting cleverly to kite the boss around the platform until the enrage goes away, but it will be pretty sketchy, and you're probably just going to end up wiping. It sucks, but if you have to release, that's what you got to do. You're not going to get your title, but it would suck even more if you caused your guild to wipe because you were being selfish. So don't be selfish. After this part is over, you want to be ready for an immediate defile. Remember to anticipate it and avoid reacting to it. Also, instead of summoning Valkyrs, he will now summon Vile Spirits. If you've ever seen the Majin Buu saga of Dragon Ball Z, the Vile Spirits are quite a bit like the Super Ghost Kamikaze attack. They are a big group of floating ghosts that he spawns that pick out a player and then follow that person around and blow themselves up when they reach it. They do AoE damage whenever they explode, so be careful, don't be next to somebody that is being targeted by the Vile Spirits. They aren't very fast, so you should be able to just kite them around the circle. You want to use defensive cooldowns to survive, deterrence, feign death, bubble, ice block, etc. Rinse and repeat. It helps if the tank starts on the one side of the platform, waits for the Vile Spirits to be summoned, and then while the Lich King is casting the spell that summons them, which is a few seconds long, that tank runs across to the other side of the platform and then waits there for the Lich King to run over to them. This has the effect of leaving all the spirits on one side of the platform and most of the raid on the other side so that people have more time to avoid them. Just keep this up until 10%. At that time, you have some role play and then you just nuke the boss afterwards. Overall, this fight is extremely fun. By far the best in the game. There's a lot that goes on in it, and everybody has to do it right in order to get the kill. If one person sets off a shadow trap, that's probably a rat for that attempt. If the shockwave hits the raid, you're done. If the infest doesn't get healed up, it can easily kill you. If your healers get picked up by Valkyries, that's a wipe. If one person doesn't get out of defile, wipe. If the necrotic plague doesn't get dispelled from your tanks, you could wipe. If you don't move in and out of the edge for the transition phase, you're going to wipe. If the Vile Spirits blow up the middle of your raid, you very well might wipe. To kill this boss, everything has to go right. So in addition to flasks, your potions and your scrolls, all your food, all the stuff that you bring to the raid, you should also bring patience, because this boss takes a long time to learn and a long time to get good at. So I wish you the best of luck, and thank you for watching my video. If you would like to see world of logs for this raid, please go to the following website.